point, I am adding a little bit of the hair of the sculpture. I kind of figure he's going to have a little bit of a slick back hair. And the good thing about serrated tools is that they give you a little texture, so you can kind of rely on the texture to get the hair going. But with 3D scanning, that texture just does not show up in the final result, so it doesn't really matter. I do like the goat horn, but I think I will be changing it to something that's a little bit more in line with the Twilight Zone, the Mystic Seer. So I'll be changing that pretty soon. At this point, I am realizing that oil-based clay, you have to get the consistency absolutely right. And the problem with oil-based clay is that sometimes you have the hard oil-based clay, the medium, and the soft, but it's generally like all different colors. So I don't like to mix different colors into the sculpture. But one of the things that could potentially be a good idea is that you can, for example, the horns, you could like just cut them off and build them using hard clay instead, or maybe even the eyes. It makes a whole lot more sense than mixing it all together. I generally don't like to add different colors on the clay just because it looks kind of messy. At this point, I also am working a little bit on the ear. One of the things that I find myself doing all the time is putting the ear way too close to the front of the head. Remember, the ear is going to be, the whole of the ear is going to be the midway from the back of the skull. But this character is a little bit different. It's not really kind of human. It's got a little bit of like a devilish type of look to it. One of the things I use with oil-based clay that I don't use for water-based clay is mineral spirits. And what I have is a little mineral spirits that I get from a hardware store, put it in a cup, and use a nice stiff brush to kind of put it on the piece. That softens up the clay, and you can manipulate it a little bit easier and do some subtle details with it. For example, around the eyes, it's very difficult to get your hand or even a tool in there. So if you use a brush and use mineral spirits, you can kind of like melt a little bit of the detail away and fade it. But normally I would use a brush with water-based clay, and you just put in a little bit of water and you can manipulate it much better. But oil-based clay is just very stiff, so you need something like a solvent in order for this to work. The back of the head, the hair, I wanted to create some large strands of hair kind of coming back. Normally, there's not a lot of detail in the heads of characters, but you have to add some interest. And in the hair, I kind of wanted to do this conceptual character type of design in the back. It almost looks like a video game character at this point. I wanted to remove the ram's horns because I do not want these. And I might do a different version with these horns, but I wanted to go a little bit more and add the horns that actually belong on this character. They're whimsical, they are kind of, they resemble cow's horns more than rams. And I think it's a little bit more appropriate to keeping with the theme of the Twilight Zone. So I removed the old ones, I added 2 pieces of aluminum wire that are going to be holding up the horn. And at this point, you have to kind of figure out how big of a horn you want. And the horns on the character are fairly large and thin. And I think that kind of makes it look not as good, but at the same time, you have to kind of go with the look of it. The good thing about oil-based clay is that I can remove the horns and work on the sculpture separately. I've done that for various parts of other sculptures. I can remove arms, legs, and then sculpt them in my hands and then reattach it. So oil-based clay has got that flexibility, but water-based clay does not. The tools I like using are the tools I made using guitar wire. The guitar wire has got this swirly pattern that you can't see on camera, but they blend things really well, and it's extremely cheap to make. So I think I got a combination from Hobby Lobby for the the brass fittings, and then guitar center, I got like the wire. It works really well. Guitar wire works really well for oil-based clay tools, but not so much for water-based tools. At this point, I'm using a combination of brushes and serrated tools to make the final details. Once you scan this, this is not going to really come out. The only way this would come out would be making a mold and getting all the details that are in there. But at this point, I'm finishing up the sculpture, and I can still work on it. That's the best thing about oil-based clay. You don't have to cover it. You don't have to do much of anything. Dust does accumulate on oil-based clay sort of stuff, but it's not much. And the next video I do on this particular sculpture is going to be the 3D scanning and 3D printing, so stay tuned for that. I'm very curious to see how well it prints, and it'll be really cool to see any subscriber that downloads it and prints it. Post up in the comments below if you made one. I really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much for all the subscribers lately that have come to the channel. And if you liked this video, thought it was useful and educational, make sure you hit like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and it keeps me motivated to create more videos for you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next sculpture video.